Blessed love and peace in Rastafari. Namaste, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mir, zaijian, ni hao, buenos dias, hitsche, aquaba, welcome, what up, though? Got most of it. Blessed love, blessed love. Yo, y'all don't talk to me too tough. But you speak so loudly to me, and it's so much love that I got to holler back. So I'm sharing another joint. Yo, I got to-do list upon to-do list. And then, even then, I'm on an excursion, like I'm doing something else beyond the to-do list at the moment. And then now, here's a side note amidst the excursion from the to-do list. How about that? That's where we at. But gots to do it. So here it is. And see if we can keep this in 10-15. Yeah, maybe. That's what we're looking at. We'll see, because we know how that goes with the time thing and everything. All right, so the tres cosas. Uno is agencies, dos is streets, and tres is service. There are additional things that I'm not intending to share that I might end up sharing. Not trying to do teasers, whatever, but I'm just speaking mindfulness and seeing how the flow flows. Flow. All right. So first one, agency. Seeing how the game works. Yo, getting recent insight that's beneficial. Oh, I'm supposed to say preface. The preface is like what the situation is at the moment. Again, this is we just completed the High Holy Days within the tradition of Israel. And in this experience of the world, we're in the Northern Hemisphere. This is the autumn. This is the conclusion of the harvest season. This is an intense period, spiritually, cosmically. Lots of stress. This is actually the most intense period of the calendar year in the world, arguably, but particularly within the Northern Hemisphere. There tends to be further intensity in the Northern Hemisphere in these types of things than within the Southern Hemisphere, because much of the Southern Hemisphere is increasingly proximate with the equator, where the seasons are not as drastic. So in terms of spirituality, ritualistically, and additionally, through the generations of thousands of years and transtemporally, it's less volatile, and so less necessity of reconciliation, generally speaking, than within the Northern Hemisphere, plus larger population too in the Northern Hemisphere. So all that being said, just completed that yesterday, Yom Kippur. Yesterday was the first day after Yom Kippur, in which I received a notice in the mailbox, I should say, that says, "Yo, we're coming through, and we're gonna do some tests. We're running some tests. Basically, it's a subjugation thing. The facade of it is testing fire detectors, and there's legitimacy within that. But at the same time, the day after Yom Kippur, and from a Jewish agency." And that's all love and peace to all kinfolk, including Jewish kinfolk. But it's appropriate to recognize that, and that goes into what I'm talking about in terms of the agencies. So that was that. And again, it's a subjugation check. And further than that, there's the inclusion of a derogatory epitaph and slur in the letter. Now, it's on the face, it would just look benign, but I talked with the agency before about this. Just recently, we had actually benevolent diplomacy and conversation after tenuous circumstances, including lockups, molestation, violence, and additionally, against me. So this past year, I left here, part of that, significantly because of that. And I get forcibly deported back here. So that's been the history for a number of years. Amidst the love, and additionally, there's the affliction. So in recent months, there's a positive communication diplomacy, including which the appropriate way in which to address yours truly. And so that's registered, and so seemingly okay, we're working in a positive direction. And then again, yesterday, receiving a notice, same old. So it can be attributed to the correspondence being authored by different personnel, not receiving the information, not getting the memo, hasn't changed in the system, It's all the plausible deniability of the institutionalizations of things. But at the same time, again, it's subjugation check and what's happening. So right now, we've got the door brace, because kinfolk got keys to the doors, and that's what we're dealing with at the moment. So, and again, it provides further insight in terms of agency, because when we see these things, when we see these aggressions, and additionally, it's weaknesses, it's vulnerabilities. So, for those who are studying the game, genuinely don't get mad and just be like, "Yo, what's happening here?" Again, I said, babies crying. The babies are crying. What's going on? So, when anybody flexes, whether it's the big cats, whether it's small, when everybody flexes, they're showing the weakness, they're showing the vulnerabilities. And when cats get beyond the fear and everything else of death and injury and torture and whatever to oneself or to one's loved ones or whatever else, beyond all that, that's how serious it is. Yes. When kinfolk get beyond that and just recognize, we recognize this is life. Then we just say, okay, better understand it. Just like the deer in the forest. It's time to get away from the wolves and this, that, and the other. Or the bison, it's time to huddle up and perhaps lock horns. But anyway, all right. So we can go into further gorilla style, elephant, and additionally, but that may be for another occasion. But this again goes into the agency, because the aggressions provide additional insight about like the mentality, the thinking in addition. So here's the newest or recent. I'm so concerned about my appearance. I don't have a mirror, too tough, because the mirror is in the bathroom. The bathroom stays dark because we don't use electricity. So I try to like make myself less distractive when I'm doing these cha-cha-chas. But here it is. So revealing of the agency and how the system of oppression works, further insight in terms of how the system of oppression works, and the further resilience and constancy and sustainability and strength of truth, justice, peace, them things like that in way. So this is the insight. How many times am I going to say that? Enough. However many it takes. The insight is that there are agencies, and when I'm talking about agencies, I'm not talking about the CIA, I'm not talking about FBI. It's not government agencies. These are trans-government. This is like we're in a post-government society at this point. It's been that way for a while. How about that? Post-government. We're in a post-government era. Now there are still governments, but the governments are a facade. So, the agencies are concerned with, and there are multiple agencies. It's not just one. It's not a monolith. It's not a monogamy. It's not a monarchy or whatever. It's not even necessarily an oligarchy, because it's a multi-plutocratic phenomenon. So the agencies, there are covert agencies, and there are somewhat increasingly transparent or publicly known or recognized agencies. The agencies are primarily concerned with behavioral control. These agencies are primarily concerned with behavioral control. The agencies of most capabilities in terms of temporal, systemic powers and influence and affliction are those that are concerned with just compliance with the system and the order of things. So there are facades of control that the agencies keep tabs on and see how many people are compliant with those. And those systems of control include, behavioral control include the government and medicine. Those are the two systems, the legal system and the medical system, particularly concerning behavioral control and keeping people in line. So there are other methods of keeping tabs on people and keeping tabs on people's behavior. That includes employment, education, university particularly, but even before that, going up to that, people's workplace, religious community, and additionally. And so those are some of the primary things that the agencies keep mind of as in terms of what is revealed here. Concerning people's behavior, and again, keeping people in order, and the leadership within these different institutions, education, employment, kind of just keep a thing and have a specific kind of a certain type of script And the scripts are different according to the traditions and authenticities or comparative authenticities within each community, but a script that just keep things in order. So and when there's something that's some kind of experience of disgruntledness, to kind of adjust that and absorb that within the script of compliance. And if there are people within the community that are increasingly independent or belligerent, or however one wants to describe that, but not just toting the line, then that's when the agency takes note of that and says, okay, what can we do to hone in this person's behavior? And additionally, so if a person is like starting to stray from the leadership of a church or a synagogue or a temple, masjid, or otherwise, the gurdwara, and the agencies don't perceive that there being many significant other methodologies of behavior control. The person is independently employed, and so maybe from an off another continent employer, whatever, or clients, or maybe it's too the person's income is too diversified to be able to kind of like pull strings very succinctly and categorically. And other than that, person doesn't care too much about government or whatever else. Then how else can that person be towed in line? Who else is the thing? Is it a matter of going to the person's children and having some type of influence through the education, the schools, and doing something like that? And again, and a lot of it, particularly again, there's covert and there's overt. But the covert, it's comparatively extremely subtle, and it's coded. It's hints. It's veiled threats, and there's degrees of things that can be either withdrawn in terms of the carrots or imposed in terms of the stick. So the agencies work through the channels, and there can be a number of different intermediaries that communicate those directives. So there's that. Now, the government is a considerable. There may be many people who don't have a lot of like immediate bosses or leaders, institutional leaders, to be able to be honed in like that. And so the general kind of like pools of amalgamation for those kinfolk who are comparatively independent. Again, the government system, whether it's legal or political activism. And then 2 is medical system. And so medical is in terms of if the person has a weakness and has a necessity, even just psychologically, of being on a medication additionally. And in that way, is that, and then, it's so expensive, need insurance. And to have insurance, got to comply with this kind of whatever it is, whether it's being on Medicaid, Medicare, or otherwise, or having some other type of employment or whatever to be able to afford whatever that perceived medical need is continually, the chronic medical need. That's one thing, medical system subjugation. The other one is the legal system, again, either being politically active and thus either proactive in terms of promoting the facade of government, and I guess a facade is a facade, or being subjugated or criminalized by the government system and accused or set up or involved in illegal activity that is illegal to the criminal system. And then behavioral control being done in that respect. So now for those individuals who are even independent of that, have some type of knowledge about how the system works, are able to avoid many of those pitfalls and entrapments and whatever else, then those individuals can be perceived as increasingly of increased concern amongst the agencies, because such individuals may be perceived as increased threats towards the order of things and influencing other people's knowledge and independence from the established behavioral controls. So but it's a delicate way of like dealing with such individuals, because anything overt brings attention, and there's a lot of, again, this is the Wild West. There's no like one agency that's the law and legitimate. Like all agencies are vying for control and power. So and they're countless agencies. They're huge. They're agencies that are on the hierarchy that have been around for a while. They're agencies that are new and upcoming. Small agencies, big, large agencies, middle, all types. And so, and some know further about each other than others. And additionally, so when some are less concerned about the order of things. Some are interested in establishing a new order and everything else, and not necessarily antagonistic towards any particular agency, but just like, if we do a different order, it's going to be better effective or better beneficial for our agency and the way we do things. So there's all this vying amongst the covert and overt agencies. So if an agency identifies an individual, and I can call myself involved in agencies, but it's somewhat predatory, and I'm so explicit and transparent in terms of not being predatory. So it's a little, there's the argument of me being involved in agency. Actually, if there's an argument about me being involved in agency, then there would have to be an argument about me being involved with multiple agencies, many of whom I may have yet to even meet. But anyways, so I can't deny that per se, but I don't subscribe to that. I don't intentionally do that, but that's discussable. We can talk about it. But that being said, whenever an agency identifies individuals or other agencies and attempts to take direct action against such an individual, the other agencies observe that and adjust accordingly. And so they may not care too much about that individual, but they see an opportunity. They see that action again as a weakness, as a vulnerability on the part of the agency that's taking that direct action. And then, they're working for that. Let's go for that. Where the weakness is. And so every agency has to be very careful about how. We're already in almost 20 minutes in this joint. Okay, oh man. All right. So anyways, the agency has to be very careful about the actions it takes. And how much, particularly the covert agencies, how much it does, because once being outed, at this point, I don't even know how much being outed matters at this point, because people seem to not to believe much of anything, and whenever there's a scandal or whatever, it's so. But particularly amongst the other agencies, there is that vying for power and the eating up of the weaker, the dog eat dog type of joints. So, it's the wild west. So one other point to share in this terms of the agencies. Actually, a couple points. One point is to recognize that the ways in which the agencies approach or engage in a perceived a person of concern, or an individual concern, or a group of concern. Many different ways. It's passive aggressive. It's a lot of antagonism. It's a lot of things to aggravate individual. Some of it can be very direct and lining up a methodology of death, torture, abduction, and additionally, the further severe the action, the further risk the agency is taking. So a lot of times it's passive aggressive. It's trying to get under the individual's skin, causing, microaggressions, for example, one of the tactics of the FBI, when surrounding a building, this is 30 years ago, 30, 40 years ago, 30, 40 years ago. One of the tactics the FBI would do, again, surrounding a building of people who are holding out. I remember this being done at Waco, in the land of the Apache, and other places. But once a place is surrounded, people ain't going nowhere. It's a holdout, it's a standoff. If the FBI goes in storming, there's the risk of lots of casualties, and that's bad on the FBI. People start to have sympathy for the people who were killed, particularly when there are women and children involved. And so there's an attempt of starving people out, this, that, and the other. Psychological tactics, and one of the psychological tactics was like playing rock and roll. I remember, but just finding things to irritate people, get under their skin, and then get them frustrated, lose patience, and basically it's the psychological warfare, and that's a rife history of that between nations, and additionally, propaganda, demoralization, and just like pricks here and there to frustrate individuals, sirens, airplanes flying overhead, even military choppers going by. All things, again, to cause stress and make the individual, or discourage the individuals, discourage the person or individuals or groups into behavior, into acts, into words, communication that is increasingly irrational and even volatile and inflammatory or otherwise, so that it further discredits the individuals, and then the further actions, direct actions of lockups, and additionally become further understandable amidst the masses and explainable. So and again, the severity of those provocations can be a gamut. It can be also it is also through seduction, temptation, all different types of setups and schemes in game being run. So it's a matter of being mindful of that, and working accordingly, staying concentrated, disciplined, mindful, balance accordingly. So that's part of the joint. The second joint. So if we look, or if we consider, like, who are these agencies? Who am I talking about? Again, it's not government. The government is an employee, or it's not that kind of cut and dry. The government is a front. So these are not agencies that are established by the government. These are agencies that influence the government, that are independent from the government. When I say the government, I'm speaking particularly about the United States, but it's applicable around the world. So the agencies, how can these agencies be evidence? What could actually be their nature? Like, what are the characteristics? Like, what are things to look for such an agency? So, some of the considerations is that these are entities and individuals who have a proficient knowledge about the influential vocations, the professions, the occupations of society. They have a knowledge about medicine. They have a knowledge about law. They have a knowledge about engineering, infrastructure. And politics, and additionally to be able to know how to guide those things, and be able to observe, like, what is the serious threats from just like the minor threats or whatever else, and so, like, have that knowledge. So obviously that's a very particular skill set for a collective to have, for the those who are employed or those who are involved in such an endeavor, such an agency. I'm being mindful again, because at any point, again, there can be a knock at the door, and so I have to be prepared for that mentally as well. So that's a skill set. So we can discern how people are acquire that kind of knowledge through education, conventional education, but also it can be specialized education. So some kind of like conventional institutions that exist for decades, that are comparable, or that are applicable to this type of agency that I'm describing: consulting firms, I can name some. I'm not saying that these are. Here we go. I'm hearing keys rustling outside the door. So, a lot of the international consulting firms. Uh, I'm not gonna. I mean, I'll just say some that come to mind. And again, this is from my experience in business school from 20 years ago. So McKinsey, I guess KPMG. I'm not saying these are the agencies that I'm talking about, but those are examples of institutions that have a knowledge about a broad set of industries and vocations, and have like an expertise about the conditions and provide guidance and counseling to institutions, governments, corporations, and otherwise about how to maneuver amidst those conditions for a lot of penga. So it's agencies in that respect. I mean, obviously, again, CIA and like secret, the intelligence field, the government intelligence field, have those characteristics as well. But this is not a government thing. So the first, like the most prominent institution that is actually applies to this experience of the agency and how it works are universities, because that's another agency that has a broad knowledge of things. But it also, part of the nature of the agency is to be able to like deflect, and play it off and say like, no, we don't do that. What are you talking about? This is and the other. So again, here come the fire alarms. So, and again, the fire alarm thing could be like, oh, well, we don't have to go in. We're just going to test the outside fire alarm. So it's, anyways, it's a subjugation test, one or the other. Test reaction. Oh, he's got to say something about it. Anyways, we're getting on half an hour. So the agencies. I was just saying the characteristics. The universities. Again, plausible deniability is a huge thing in this joint. So the universities are very complex institutions where things can be hidden. A little think tank here, a little incubator here, a little contractor worker, even off the books here. Offices. Interesting how the Blue Jays are responding to this. Ah. That's interesting. Don't sleep on the Blue Jays. So at universities, so much knowledge is there, so much power and influence, particularly perhaps unprecedented in the history of academia, in terms of its influence on society, particularly amidst the ascension of science, and its know-how. And that's another knowledge base, is science. So science and technology. So universities are like the prime agencies in this respect, and even multiple agents. There's no doubt about it. Like agencies being involved with universities, and working through universities, and universities maintaining like feigning an absence of culpability for that, because universities are just places of learning, but there's knowledge beyond those proclamations. So that's a primary practitioner of this agency methodology of systemic oppression. And through the universities, there's access to governments, youth, doctors, and all the people that have the interaction with those individuals as well, and institutions as well. So mindfulness, that's pretty much the the purpose, the immediate purpose for me sharing what I share at the moment is mindfulness of that. And again, mindfulness for the purpose of avoiding and being disciplined through the agitations and aggressions and whatever else. And to be balanced, because we work together. Like we all, like there's no purity in this game. And so it's beneficial to recognize that, and when we find something particularly disagreeable, and additionally, distance ourselves from it as much as we can, because we can only be frustrated with ourselves, and we can only blame ourselves for our connection, our involvement, our dependence upon the things that we disagree with, and at the end of the day, we only answer for ourselves. So there's that. So that's a consideration about agencies and contemporary oppression. The next joint. Now the Blue Jays are sounding off after the sirens. And from another direction, there might be other threats also that the Blue Jays are addressing. So anyway, no such thing as coincidence, but there is coinciding. Incongruence. But anyway, all right. The second joint, it said agency streets. Okay, so this one, all right, I'm already half an hour in this joint. And my back is better, to the point, and we've only been in this at half an hour though. So, all right. Streets. A few years ago, actually, might be even a decade ago, I go to a local coffee house, and that I go to for years and years, even before that, even probably maybe a decade before that. And so when I go there are some new baristas, it happens. So, I remember one of the baristas asking me about if I work the street when I'm placing my solicitation of beverage. Do I work the street? And I said, "Whoa, that's a rather provocative sounding question." And I said as much, and the barista was like, just looking at me plain faced and straight, like just genuine. And explaining that I knew what she meant, and it's a phrase that's utilized to describe people who work on the same along the road where a lot of restaurants and establishments are, and so there's a discount that's provided to employees of other establishments or whatever, and so the phrase is called working the street, working on the same street where all the other establishments are. But obviously that sounds like somebody on the street, like a prostitute or a pimp or something else like that. And so I just say that's a rather, and the barista just looks at me plainly and just explains it. But at the same time, there's this air of like, yeah, continue on, please say what you're saying, because in actuality, the same thing is happening: prostitution and pimping through the establishments on the street, and that is something, like I said, communicated to me 10 years ago. And as I observe the conditions, it becomes increasingly evident, and even just within the recent days, like the game, like just human trafficking itself as a phenomena. I was sitting, this is actually this past week, I was sitting right across the street from the coffee house. I don't go to there further because I saw further things that are disturbing, and so it's been half a decade since I've been there. Love and peace to everybody who works there, who continues to work there since the days I visit, and everybody else who's involved. But I just stopped going there because of the things I see. But a few days ago, I'm across the street, sitting on the curb as I do because I live right here, and I think about that notion of human trafficking again. I think about how a lot of people's, well, I'll put it like this: what I noticed for years is how restaurants and coffee houses and this, that, and the other take on an air of very very veiled brothels, where the staff are available, or it's the staff have the actual skill set that is involved in terms of waiting tables or otherwise, but there's this like subtle, tacit kind of like communication of the staff being available for additional services for those who have the inclination and the material coffers to provide for that. And so, particularly again, since that conversation a decade ago, I've become increasingly mindful of that possibility. And as I am mindful of that possibility and I observe increasingly the not just probability but the actuality. Now, the question is how prevalent it is, and it's very difficult to just say everybody is doing it, but at the same time, not so much, because it doesn't necessarily have to mean it doesn't have to be direct consummation. Even just person, particularly youth, seeing a pretty girl, or seeing a girl seeing a handsome boy or whatever, and being enamored, and experiencing that kind of euphoria, and boys responding accordingly on their own without actually having kind of that interaction, but wanting to go back to the restaurant and to see the same pretty girl. So that's another type of pimping. That's another type of human trafficking, to be honest. And that might seem like making light of those that are experiencing like nasty, vile traumas of human trafficking. But it's important to acknowledge this also as human trafficking, because it establishes a culture where human trafficking is increasingly palatable for those who are participating within the culture. When they see that, when they know they see that when they go to restaurants, and additionally, and when there's such a rife culture, and I go to restaurants, I pick up food from restaurants. I don't eat at restaurants too much, too tough, particularly because of predatory vibes, but I still go to restaurants, and it's very difficult to avoid that, particularly when partaking of food of different cuisines, and additionally, or when one doesn't cook for oneself. Restaurants are a luxury, and I'm not going to go into a lot of details about that, but I just say I'm not pure in terms of avoiding it. But the actuality is that when we do find ourselves in those environments, and we do observe the conditions in those environments, again, not everything is like Hooters or whatever else, but it doesn't have to be that extreme and that exaggerated to actually be very similar to that as well. And that's a very proper example of what I'm talking about. So, and the mechanics of what's involved in terms of the trafficking, and how it's normalized. So not everybody. Some people want to be further high class in the type of lifestyle that people are in. So, anyways, the point is that the experience of working the street is increasingly normalized, and the experience of human trafficking, even in comparatively subtle and perceivably benign ways, is increasingly prevalent and normalizes that experience, that objectification. We can easily call it that. And when that is normalized, when that everybody's involved in that, then it becomes further difficult to call out the extremities of that as well, because it's necessary to call out what one is involved within oneself, particularly when it's not necessary. You don't need to go to restaurants. I'm not hating on restaurants, but I'm just saying it's a want. It's not a need. We do have needs, for even cultural needs, for food that's not readily available, particularly ritualistically and traditionally heritage-wise. But by and large, the restaurants are a luxury, and it may be a large part of the economy. Service economy is a large part of the aggregate domestic economy, particularly in industrialized nations. That's saying something as well, because what the service that's being provided is not the actual food, but it's actually the psychology and further things. So, and the subjugation is a significant part of that. So, the objectification and subjugation is a significant part of that. So, it's beneficial to recognize that, and when we recognize that, then we see why people are so hesitant, reluctant, impotent in responding to the atrocities of children being forcefully transported across continents, across borders, across households, within families, and additionally. So it requires a certain amount of sobriety to be able to acknowledge the actuality of sufferation that surrounds us. So that's working the street. Also, and again, that's human trafficking. When the baristas are being objectified, when it's like the boss makes it lets it be known that the baristas like they have clients, the supporters, well-known customers that are they're very big friends of the establishment, and that they're big favors for the baristas who are cooperative in visiting with those customers. And then if the baristas or the servers are unwilling to have those type of visitations, well, yeah, don't have the need for the services of that particular individual at this point. So, and it's all sophisticated. There's all the buffers of communication and interaction, and very very little like quid pro quo directly exchange or whatever, because that's too obvious. It's too much of a paper trail. But it's much through innuendos and hints and additionally, but it's no less objectifying and subjugating and trafficking. So one of the most prominent perpetrators of this human trafficking again is universities. Aidaba. And I can give full disclosure about recent challenges, communication, additionally, intolerances that are communicated to me from university, but I've been talking about universities for a long time, so this is just a continuation of that. And it's the actuality, like universities is a significant perpetuator of the problems in society at the moment. It is difficult because also universities are also a significant educator of people, and so that tends to be the nature of and the paradox of the problem. But again, universities being perhaps the largest perpetrators of human trafficking, because it's a sex shop. I'm speaking from personal experience. It's the sexual interaction is extremely accessible and done. Speaking from personal experience, I'm not saying that proudly either. I'm testifying. Blue Jays are active, so that's facts. House parties, hookups, all this other type of stuff. It's facilitated through the university. It's encouraged, it's promoted, it's supported, it's subsidized by the university through the student groups, the budget to the student groups having so this, that, and the other, and so the university can say, well, we can't be held responsible for what the students do themselves. We have guidelines and make sure that the funds are utilized for these specific purposes. Socializing, that's a very broad guideline. House party and the gathering can be a preset to the after party, the after set. So and then there's less oversight in terms of those joints. And then when alcohol is involved, and additionally, I live that life. I know it. It's going on right now, and it's a huge part of the university life. It's a huge part of the promotion, the motivation for high school students, and additionally, and it happens at high school. I don't have that experience at high school because I wasn't that dude at high school, but it's at that level. And universities are kind of just like the Shangri-La of that indulgence, for those brethren who are able to make it to that point, because cats is getting spent up in high school. So that's why there's such a large population of sisters at the university, because sisters in that type of culture, sisters excel. And that's not hate, that's facts. Dudes get wasted down. Can't live that life very long. Get spent up and spit out. So and in that process, the sisters get hardened and like nice at the manipulation and seduction and temptation and everything else like that, and at the same time learn get skill sets to ascend through the hierarchies of convention, so that by time grad school, wow, that's just bananas. That's a little bit of an inside reference, but that's facts. So, and again, motivation for the system and the corruption. So, anyways, all that being said, everybody involved is being trafficked. Everybody involved is being trafficked. Actual, that's facts. I might sound flippant and very like unfeeling and like callous and just being plain spoken about that, but there's the necessity of just acknowledging that. And I've said things like this for a long time, but like I said, you don't talk very much back to me, so but you holla, and so I speak further. I speak further because there's the necessity. But anyways, all right, let's wrap this up. Can we get this under an hour? Hey da. So that's the street, because the working the street goes through the ivory towers too. A lot of healing, a lot of healing, a lot of healing, and I'm getting to some of that as well. Excuse me. So the third joint is agency, streets, and service. This is actually comparatively brief. This is something that is shared recently, just within the past day. Going into the service. I can give some of the background. It's maybe beneficial to do that. I'm going to go back to that reference of the fox and the hound growing up together as pups, but having two different prospects in terms of path. The fox being a fox eating the chickens, and the hound being a hound protecting the chickens. And so that's an old Disney story. However, the actuality is that the hound eats chickens too. How about that? The hound works for the agrarian who keeps and eats the chickens himself. So what's the antagonism towards the fox about? It's hypocrisy. Particularly when a fox learns to be a vegan and eat plants, and becoming a coyote or a lamb or a goat, something of that sort. However, a fox evolves from that state. Anyways, the purpose for that is just recognizing that when we go through the process of education and maturing in life from a young age into young adulthood, and additionally, there's the experience, there's the phenomena of kinfolk who are very close with each other, like growing further distant and actually working for different sides of a binary, or of a contentious convention. Now, me being mixed, I know keenly that experience of the two different sides of a coin. And it's difficult, it's painful to feel that separation, to feel that division, to feel that eventuality, to feel that inevitability of people separating, of people who are close to each other, loving each other, proper respect, kicking it, playing video games or doing whatever, eventually like being at each other. And so I refer to that as the service, going into the service, because how that happens, sometimes it can be like people have a fall. And again, it's not just when people are from two different groups that are at each other. Even when people are in the same group, maybe have different political views, or even work for different companies that are competitive with each other. Now, that might be somewhat temporary, because companies shift and merge and do all types of stuff. But at some point, there's this paradigm that's very comparatively prevalent of people who are, I can't say prevalent. There's a paradigm of a prevalent paradigm of antagonism within convention, and there is a frequently experienced. There's a frequent experience of people who grow close together, getting enveloped within that antagonism, and then being on different sides of that antagonism. So I'm speaking to that experience of when such individuals go into that. Now, again, I had that experience from law school. Dear kinfolk that I love still to this day, continually and involuntarily and infinitely. I mean, eternally, because that's the nature of love. But at the same time, like, I don't practice law. I don't take the bar. And additionally, and we have that's a schism right there. And when I experienced the persecution, additionally from or through the guise of the system, through the guise of the U.S. government, and additionally, that my kinfolk from law school are involved indirectly and or directly within that persecution. So it's challenging, and I'm perceived as the fox. What I learned further is that actually it doesn't matter how I'm perceived or whatever else, but I'm not the rebel. I'm not the rebel though. That's what I do recognize. And anyways, the point is to talk about that point of separation, that point of like going in different paths. And so again, like I said, oftentimes it can happen like towards the part of graduation when kinfolk start to like wake up to the actual like, yo, it's gonna be tough to stay in contact. Yo, it's gonna be tough to like maintain this friendship, like genuinely. And so like, oh, yo, we're working for this and you're working for that. Oh, that vision of like lifelong connection or whatever else can be challenged at that point. And so that pathway of separation can be one of just having a fallout, of just like having an argument, and the argument just being like a manifestation of just those frustrations and sadness. And it can be easier just to like break up like that and not talk to each other and just identify that as the causal factor. When in actuality, like both knew it just like it was going to be like this, and so this is the only way we could do it. So, but anyways, there's the fallout scenario. There's like the gradual kind of like just tapering off and just frequent speaking less with each other over the years, and until it just like get enveloped within each one's own respective lives. Then there's like the like not hollering back, like one side particularly like just like shuts off and doesn't respond, pretends like they don't know the other one or whatever else. I experienced some of that. So that's part of the cost of love and like being true to that love, regardless of the conditions, because not everybody has the same type of proclivity or otherwise. And so it can be a difficult experience when like, yo, we used to kick it tough, and now like you don't even like holler back. So that was years and years ago that I experienced the beginning of that. So that's what I'm referring to as going into the service, is that separation. And just recognize it's not a matter of like falling out or whatever, but they went into the service. Now, and that happens even after the graduate experience. That happens when friends meet or whatever else, and particularly at a young age, when somebody's at a young age and has yet to like make those commitments in life, and things are increasingly open-ended, still learning, still broadening, everything else like that. But at some point, starting to close up and be like, okay, this is where I got to narrow things down. And so that's going into the service. And when a person makes those decisions, doesn't always notify people like, yeah, I'm not going to be talking to you for the rest of life at this point. And even people who are like intermediary friends may still keep in contact with both sides and just be like, oh yeah, you know, they're doing this, they're doing that. But they can't like tell the other person that too much, because like, yeah, they know the other one can't mess too much with the other one. So just like, yeah, all right, they in the service. So that's kind of just like a benign way of putting it. Now, it doesn't have to necessarily be a finality, but it's enough of an ambiguity to help to provide some of just that recognition and reconciliation accordingly. And that service doesn't have to always be, or even predominantly be militaristic. It can be it can be the military service and being antagonistic and just soldiering and like, yo, they're about to do some dirt. They gotta get their hands in it with their crew, and yeah, they're not howling at people today, and that's how it is. So it can be that type of service. It can be like the benevolent service. Same thing. Well, same thing in terms of commitment to their own community, but they're not getting necessarily their hands dirty, but now they just serving in their own community. They're just like, they're tending to the poor, they're tending to the sick or whatever, but just they only doing that in their own joint. They're not hollering at nobody else outside that. And so the walls are around them. No holler at them. It's a different type of service, but it's still going in the service. Now, there is one service that I'm in that is somewhat distinct because the actual purpose of the service is to continue communicating, and that's the diplomatic service. Um, and there are strict protocols in the diplomatic service as well, and the protocols in different crews are not necessarily the exact same, but it does provide for ongoing communication, even the obligation of ongoing communication. So that's the service I'm in, and I part of my charge in this diplomatic service is actually the flip side of what I just described in terms of not ghosting people, but the opposite of ghosting, which is unsolicited calling, which avails itself. I mean, ghosting is painful. I can imagine it's painful. I don't know. I've ghosted people before beginning my spiritual path. So I know the pains of it today, particularly as a spiritual teacher and spiritual practitioner. But since that point, and I maybe I reconcile that, and I mean, there's some things it's difficult to like just it doesn't go away. It's just going to be there. But perhaps I reconcile it, or I ease the malaise about it within myself, the existential angst, by saying, okay, that happened before my spiritual path. And doesn't excuse it, but I've learned better. I've changed, and it's difficult for me to find that person at this moment to make amends and communicate, because I've done that. I've done that with lots of people, but I can't do that with everybody. I shouldn't say I can't. It's extremely difficult to do that with everybody, because, anyways, it's very difficult. So I have ghosted people, and I know what that feels like, but I don't know if everybody feels that same kind of angst and pain and malaise from after ghosting people. So all that being said, the pain of reaching out to people, making unsolicited calls, being looked at and accused of being a stalker or an awkward or Jake or whatever the words are, the accusations are, the pains of being accused of that, insignificant, irrelevant, crazy, psychotic, whatever, as painful as that may be, I think it's less painful than actually doing the ghosting. Just like for me, what I recognize in life is that I'll much rather be betrayed than be the betrayer, just from my experience of life. Because the betrayals that I've committed in this life, oh man, I'm about to cry about that right now, because I can't do nothing about it, and I know how much it hurts. I know the pain, and it doesn't stop. It's for life. So I know that pain of the things how I've betrayed others. And so I'd much rather, as painful as being betrayed is, and frustrating, and like even like knowing one's walking into betrayal, as painful as that is, I'd much rather experience that and be betrayed than be the betrayer. So that's part of the cost of being in the diplomatic service. So anyways, woe is me. Cry baby, cry baby. So that's the service. Agencies, streets, and service. What I said that I don't know if about sharing at the moment, I'll share two things, and because actually me sharing this right now is me keeping me away from doing particularly the second joint. So I'll share the first joint first, which is a political joint concerning circumstances here in the Heights. I've shared some notes, and this is it's not the priority within what we do. That includes myself personally. That includes the Sono Ashram. That includes Sangha Yosef. That includes what I'm understanding as the priorities within Rastafari. But these are some of the conditions that are experienced in the immediacy of where I live, and so this is what is shared. Basically, it's basically a scenario where the municipality that claims this building, that claims the land upon which this building stands. It's called Cleveland Heights, the city of Cleveland Heights, in the northeast area of Ohio, Cuyahoga County. And within recent, there's the hour mark. Within the past couple of decades, Cleveland Heights has been known for generations for being increasingly, it's claimed to be multicultural. It's not actually multicultural, but it's claimed that, particularly compared to other municipalities that are very much not multicultural. So it's very much comparative, but it's known for being liberal. And it's known for very strong liberal politics. Middle class, middle class, lower middle class, upper middle class, $1 million mansions, as well as public housing. So comparatively large municipality within this, comparatively speaking to the other suburbs of the of the larger Cleveland area, Cuyahoga area. One of the older suburbs, and immediately right adjacent, neighboring the city of Cleveland. So it's an inner ring suburb. Anyways, all that being said, within the recent decades, it becomes increasingly basically the LGBTQ HQ, and just running shop. And there's still a large population within Cleveland Heights, that is not LGBTQ, but can't say too much against it because it's too either afflicted, and it's either afflicted. The population is either afflicted by the system and conditions, or has its hands in too much dirt to be able to afford being called out for what it's doing, which is what the LGBTQ community does. When experiencing antagonism from outside, is find dirt on others and just like lambast others, and then accumulate the wreckage. So in that process, through very methodic political maneuvering, LGBTQ has set up an HQ effectively here in the Heights area, and but it doesn't have like the there's a strong Orthodox Jewish community that is increasingly present, particularly within nearby municipalities as well. Been here for long generations. So I just say that in terms of like who the power brokers are within this particular municipality. That's much of it, because everyone else is comparatively significantly leveraged. Do I include myself in that? I'm not in the U.S. system per se, officially. So, because they can't even get my name right. How about that? So, I'm not a U.S. citizen. I don't participate in the politics, and additionally, so I haven't filled out a tax form in over 20 years. So, don't have a bank account, don't have driver's license, don't have utilities, don't pay rent. Don't have an income higher than $2,000, generally speaking. So, anyways, yeah, I'm kind of out that game. I'm in deeper games, but wow, how about battery now? We're dealing with that. We've been in this for an hour now. Back hasn't been too tough though. That's nice. It would be nice to have this when I'm sleeping, this type of non-irritation or whatever. But hey, it is what it is. All right, when I'm trying to sleep. Marriage, children, marriage, wife, children, family, marriage, wife, children, family, marriage, wife, children, family. How about that? Don't have my notebook on me at the moment. So anyways, this is the scenario. There's still a population, I could even say the majority population, that doesn't want the LGBTQ, that's being very significantly imposed upon. We could say afflicted or persecuted or prosecuted or oppressed by LGBTQ at this point, because flags are all over the place, on municipal buildings, in front of schools, on sidewalks. In addition, I've referred to that already. So here's the joint. Annexation. A segment of Cleveland Heights annexing itself from the municipality of Cleveland Heights and establishing its own municipality, according to the methodologies and formula established by the state of Ohio and da 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 da. And there's a specific geographic area that is identified in this scenario. Basically, the foundation, the base of it is Forest Hill Park, and then and it includes presumably a portion of East Cleveland, so that it involves cooperation and proper communication additionally with kinfolk in East Cleveland. But from Euclid, generally Euclid Avenue, along Lee Road towards Superior towards Euclid Heights Boulevard all the way to the side street over here. Not the first immediate side street, but the one that connects further towards Murray Hill. So that side street all the way to the street that kind of is an extension off of Mayfield Road. So it's a little bit of a zigzag over there. Then Mayfield Road all the way alongside the Lakeview here and the Jewish burial site here, to Coventry Road, then north on Coventry back to Superior, basically running adjacent to the burial ground, and then Coventry to Superior, then back to Euclid. So, and that's where Forest Hill begins again. So, anyways, that's the basic geographic area, and that involves restoration of the streams, resurfacing of the streams. There are two prominent streams that run in this particular area, one of which I grew up amidst. So resurfacing those, recultivating the nature, healing, restoring the nature around the water, cleaning the water. There's a sewage dump with warning signs, and additionally right at Forest Hill Park. So cleaning that up, eventually making it, I won't say drinkable in this generation. That would be, I think, a big step. I don't say it's impossible, but I don't want to be like, man, this is a scenario. So, but making it safe to walk in and like be with. So that's a big part of the project. Restore one of the streams goes by the street that I just mentioned. So instead of it being a street, how about a canal? And that's a very pleasant thing to dine amidst and to visit, to walk along. And additionally, so having resurfacing that stream and continuing that stream through the middle of the street, blocking off Mayfield Road to through traffic, basically allowing only service vehicles, public transportation, and freight vehicles along the road. Perhaps less so with concerns with Euclid Heights Boulevard, but also with the segment of Superior Road that's included within this geographic area, particularly from Mayfield to Euclid, cutting off that. And that's the foundation, establishing Forest Hill Park as a native reserve, a native natural reserve. So the native kinfolk have establishment there, a native heritage learning center on the land. And that the entire park is devoted to that experience of native culture, heritage, and relationship with all our relatives, earth, animals, the elements, trees, plants, air, and further. So that's the foundation, and then the rec center that's there can move to Severance or someplace else. And I don't mean to sound flippant or just like presumptuous, but that's actuality. And the rec center, as it stands on Mayfield and Superior and Cumberland, I guess that's called Cumberland, Monticello actually, that being utilized as a school. So that can include the Native Learning Center, but then also the school from preschool to even to the university level for this municipality, for this annexed municipality. There are further residential facilities here, particularly apartment complexes here, multifamily housing, particularly on the the southern side, multifamily housing. There are still some individual houses in the area as well, in that geography that's described. Restoration of the stream again through Cumberland Park, through Yeovil Kane Park, and the Yeovil Kane Park can be a joint project in terms of stewardship. Resurfacing of the stream that runs immediately in the middle of the whole thing around the theater, the open amphitheater, and additionally, that's very doable to maintain the prominent structures there and still have a natural flowing stream in the middle of it. Actually, that enhances the experience. And again, a joint stewardship of that facility in that location, and then also a resurfacing of the stream that runs along Euclid Heights Boulevard as well, and up to the point before it crosses Euclid Heights Boulevard, that being a joint stewardship project as well. Comparatively independent concerning utilities, and okay, I'll share this element of it as well. So the municipality being straight up multicultural and traditional family, so promoting that experience. Specifically premised upon the Panchasilas of the Buddha, the 5 ethics of peace, sharing, chastity, honesty, and sobriety, and the Gayana Shigoa, the law of the great peace established by Dikanawida and Hiawatha that precipitates many centuries later the establishment of the U.S. Constitution. So those two things being like the foundation, but the foundation of the municipality and the governance of the municipality. So it's not like a mayor, government council or whatever, but it's actually clans and chiefs that are the ones that make the decision for the municipality. But that takes some cultivation. So there's the in this scenario, the establishment of an interim administration, and that interim administration is Rastafari. Why? Because it's Afrocentric, and there's a large Afrocentric population that we're articulating and we're including within this geography at this very moment. But it's not just an Afrocentricity. It is an Afrocentricity that is disciplined, that practices a livity, and that supports and touts and champions a livity that is disciplined, that many kinfolk who are, well, I'll just say that's point, full stop. It champions this livity. In addition to that, it has, as an Afrocentric collective and phenomena, it has intercontinental credibility. I ain't saying Rastafari is perfect or otherwise, but in terms of its relationship with other communities, and additionally, there is an increasing amount of institutional credibility than many of the domestic Afrocentric groups, factions, and additionally from the United States, because a lot of the kinfolk and black folk in the United States are enveloped in just the same game, and even regardless of what the words are that are spoken, are also have like same strings attached that just make things futile. So Rastafari is less caught up in, and again, there's corruption and strings within Rastafari as well. But this is a Rastafari. The interim administration is Rastafari, includes Rastafari brethren that have this vow of the Panchasilas and have further credibility of providing the administration for facilitating the transfer and establishing and maintaining order and peace, cooperation, and cultivation of the beginning stages of the municipality and the establishment of the renderings of the Gayana Shigoa within the municipality. So I should also provide, just as it's very appropriate to recognize that not just anybody has an intrinsic authority to practice the Gaya Nashagoa. I don't have the authority as an individual to just say, oh yeah, we're going to practice Gaya Nashagoa, because that's not mine to do. It's not ours to do. It's the Haudenosaunee. It's the native people of the land further east of here. It's an actual thing. It's not an imagination. It's not a constitution that just can be replicated. People can do a rendering of it, and that's plausible, but it's the actual Gaya Nashagoa is an actual living law. And in order to be part of it, one has to be, or a group has to be accepted into it. So the consideration is the municipality organizing itself in a way that is congruent with the traditional methodologies. That includes clan system, and additionally of the Gaya Nashagoa, of the Haudenosaunee, and then applying to join, to be adopted into the Gaya Nashagoa. So that's a huge thing to do. It takes lots of preparation, and additionally, particularly for an established constituency that has yet to even be properly organized or otherwise. So it steps towards that, and there's the propensity of ongoing consultation and cooperation with Haudenosaunee concerning that, presuming there's that interest. This is a scenario. That it's appropriate for me to describe. So not just to be it's not we don't own it or whatever else. Now, like I said, there is the propensity of doing something that's similar to it, because that's what the United States does for the past 300 years, near about, over 200 years. Dosciente. But we also see the fallacies within that as well. So the point is, the big part of that process is establishing the clans as a cooperative thing. And so and it being multicultural, genuinely, not just Afrocentric, but genuinely balanced and multicultural clans. So it's clans from all around the world. At the moment, I shouldn't say it. Today, within Sangha Yosef, we have a methodology of a clan system that involves 16 clans from the rivers of the world, from the regions of the different rivers of the world, and that's what we utilize in terms of the methodology of our organization and relationship, and so that is a paradigm that can be utilized by the municipality. So that's much of it. Oh yeah, this is funded by the international system. All the IGOs, UN, UNESCO, UNICEF, UNDP, World Bank, IMF, IADF, or is it IADB, OAF? How about I get the right thing? OAS, even the African Development Bank, European Union, Asian Development Bank, African Union, BRICS, KSID, Israel, because the world has a vested interest in doing this. So don't worry, we don't have to worry. That sounds very, but money is not the concern in this respect. It's actually the will of doing it, because things are just sitting idle. Cats want this to be done. Big cats want this to be done, because this works in the order of the system of the agencies that I began this whole joint with. Because I'm not calling this a solution. This is not a solution. I'm not part of it. Even this municipality being established, I'm not part of the municipality. Which is appropriate for me to articulate this point of it as well. I'm not a part of that. I'm not becoming a U.S. citizen amidst this municipality being established. This is not a solution in my estimation, in my perception. So I'm not saying I'm not touting this. I'm articulating. I'm like a representative that's representing other interests, because I don't subscribe to this joint. I say it's a compromise, and it's addressing the actualities of where things are at the moment. So I'm articulating in that respect, and against because I got this is an excursion. This is a side note from an excursion from my to-do list for today. So anyways, like I said, this is not, in my estimation, this is not a solution. This is not the solution. It is a compromise. So in this scenario also, it's appropriate for me to recognize this involves the establishment of a Rastafari embassy, either where I'm sitting at this moment or in a nearby facility that we've discussed on previous occasions. That's basically at this moment an abandoned building, actually a set of abandoned buildings. So, and that it can also be conjoined in conjunction with the Native Heritage Learning Center and facilities. So again, I'm less involved, less interested, less motivated, less enthused about like even discussing that or talking about details, whatever else, because I've worked on this type of joint for over 20 years. And at this point, I'm focusing on education because I know the challenges of even just the beginning stages of a joint like this and how much work it's involved in. Not just work, but just patience and frustration and everything else. So I'm not available to lead that charge at this moment. My focus and my priority, my charge is education, and continuing preparing additional kinfolk to be mindful, to be aware, to be informed, and to be knowledgeable, to be disciplined in continuing this trod and proximate and congruent and cooperative trods. So that's what my priorities, that's what my focus is. I'm sharing this as, like I said, a representative in the spirit of the diplomatic service, which I'm supposed to be retired from. I'm a spiritual teacher now, but it's part of my duty, I guess, as a chief in the Sangha Yosef Rastafari fold. So that's one joint. The second joint is this, and this is based on, is this Dusty? Oh, is it Dusty? Is it Dusty? How about reverse? Oh, that's dust. Oh, that's dust. The books aren't dusty. The shelf is dusty though. The books be utilized, and I'm supposed to be utilizing the books right now because that's what my next thing, and that's the excursion. I'm supposed to be setting up a sukkah right now. That's my to-do. So this excursion is what I'm about to tell you right now, and the to-do is the sukkah and a siddur and some other things I'm supposed to be working on at this moment. So we'll go to the excursion. So the excursion is a book based upon recent experiences, but also long-established studies. I'm taking a sip. I did say a prayer for this over an hour and a half ago. It might have influenced my further succinctness or prolongedness. Either way, it is what it is. This project, this excursion that I'm preparing to embark upon at the moment, is an exercise in scriptural reasoning. It's twofold, it's two-part. So, and actually at this point it has the makings of a book, booklet perhaps, just call it a booklet. Here's the title of it: Panchasila's Umbrella and the Rainbow Chakras. So basically it is it is a scriptural reasoning treatise. So actually it's Rastafari sequence reasoning. That's a specific methodology of scriptural reasoning. So what Rastafari sequence reasoning is this. We provide a brief line from different traditions, Holy Scriptures, right there, the Scriptures, on a topic. And we invite the participant to put those, so we present those lines without any particular subject intentionality. Basically, whatever the verse is in any of those scriptures that the line comes from, we list those verses numerically. And again, it's comparatively random because they're coming from different scriptures. So the numbering that they're coming from is different from each other. So there's not a specific order in that sense. So when we list, it's comparatively random. So that's part of the purpose. So with that comparatively random, although it's not actually random, but it's not. Maybe the logic of the sequencing of the presentation becomes increasingly evident with further studies in further generations. What up? Anyways, for the moment, we present it like that, and we invite the participant to put that in a sequence that makes sense to that participant. particularly with the thought of in the imagination of a story, a narrative being told through the aggregate of that sequence. But basically, just whatever makes sense. Like, what's the sequence, and then talk about it. Why did you start it with that one? Was that the most important one that you started out with, or was it the most important one that you concluded with, or did you put the most important one in the middle, or which were there a few most important ones, or which was the least important, or like why was it, and like what were you vibing with that, or why did this one stick out for you, or just that's the discussion. And it's done in a circle, particularly amongst youth who are increasingly receptive to this type of formidable discussion. Because this is ancient wisdom right here, from thousands of years that very few people had even access to just a few centuries ago, and that very many people today, upon becoming mature in society and everything, curse and vilify. Like, oh, we can't even listen to that. At this moment today. So there are comparatively fewer people who can actually even just listen to the truth that's being communicated in each of these scriptures in one way or another, and to be able to talk about that in an honest way rather than just say, just immediately naysaying whatever it's coming just because it's coming from the other book. So one line, an innocuous line, and there's a lot of examples. We've done lots of exercises on this. I've done particularly lots of exercises on this for numerous years. So that's what Rastafari sequence reasoning is. It's very accessible. It's very simple. One line. So we do 6. There's 6 basic traditions here we work with: Israel, Hinduism, Buddhism, Taoism, and that includes Tao, Confucius, and Menke. Christianity and Islam. So those are major world religions. There are a few additional major world religions: Sikh, Baha'i, particularly. We can talk about native tradition. We can talk about African. We can talk about European, Nordic, particularly. There are many other traditions, obviously, but in terms of world traditions that have a worldwide diaspora, a community that's prominent, these are some. Particularly scriptural tradition. These are 6 of the major ones. So people can fault us, but we have to. It's a matter of being accessible for those who are comparatively new to the entirety of it. So we want to make it not overwhelming. So it's 6, and again, it's just one line. So it's very accessible, and we try to find language from each one that's comparatively, I won't say benign, but that's we find subject matter that's like healing and natural and comparatively universal, and then also we look for the scriptures that like most speak to that experience, whatever the topic is. But then also another protocol or another guiding factor is also finding passages that have a language that is further relatable to a participant who's coming from another tradition. So again, these are all English translations, but anyways, it goes into further detail, but that's the project I'm working on at the moment. Again, the specific topic in this exercise of Rastafari sequence reasoning is twofold. The first topic is the Panchasilas. So each of these ethics: peace, sharing, chastity, honesty, and sobriety. For each one of these, finding a line from each of the traditions. Act 1 is peace. Act 2 is sharing. Act 3 is chastity. Act 4 is honesty, and Act 5 is sobriety. So for Act 1, peace, just going to each of these scriptures, and finding one line, like one verse or if it's two verses, very brief two verses, but it better be relevant. But just one line from each tradition on that topic of peace, and then listing those 6 lines all together, and then inviting the participant. So what sequence would you list these lines? And that's it. Act 1. There it is. Discussion can be an hour-long discussion, a 2-hour-long discussion. It can be a lifelong discussion. But that's what it is. And so for those who have an interest, would you like to see Act 2? Okay, there it is. Now we talk about sharing. Here's one line from each tradition about sharing. There it is. So that first, what'd that be called? What's a set of acts? Yada. Now my back is talking. It's not a chapter, but whatever that is, it's not a scene. I already didn't use the big joints already, so now what I use that for? I guess the interlude. That's what we'll just say. It's the interlude. So the next topic is the rainbow chakras. So just as the pre-interlude was the 5 principles, the post interlude portion has 6 topics on 6 themes on the different chakras, and particularly the elements that are represented through the chakras. So it's not necessarily specifically the chakras themselves, but the elements represented from the chakras. So it's earth, water, fire, air, and then we include shade or darkness. I have to prepare that one again. Shade or darkness as the 5th element, and then the 6th chakra, like the third eye chakra, is described as the 5th chakra is actually space, is emptiness. The voice chakra, and we as an element describe that. As an element that is described by us as shade or darkness. That's arguable, that's discussable, that's not meant to be contrary or disrespectful or disagreeable or false representation of what is meant or intended by that chakra, but that's what we do in terms of our familiarity with the elements in that sequence. So we just say the darkness or the shade. Then for the 6th chakra, again, the 6th and 7th chakra are considered as trans-temporal, like not being represented by an element, and thus like running out of elements anyway. So what we do is don't do anything with the 7th chakra. That we stayed at. But for the 6th chakra, we utilize we apply the concept of seeds, and the consideration with seeds is how seeds are a composite of all the other elements, and seeds are a representation and the essence of the infinity of life. Plant seeds, animal seeds, people seeds. The seed has the propensity for perpetuity of life in the universe. So it exists amidst as a composite of all the elements, but then has a propensity beyond the elements as well, essentially. So again, discussably, that actually applies to that notion of the third eye. Again, discussably. So either way, it's an element that is considered significant enough and appropriate. It's a concept and a guidance and a discipline that's considered significant enough to include in that respect. And so that for that purpose, we include that. So this second interlude segment includes those 6 topics: earth, soil, water, fire, air, wind, darkness, shade, and then seeds. So one line for each of those topics: Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, Act 4, Act 5, Act 6. One line for each of those subjects from the different traditions. So anyways, that's what I'm supposed to be doing right now. That might sound like a lot. To be honest, it actually is. However, I've been doing this for years, and so I kind of know where to go at this point. I have to look up a few things in terms of details, but for me, it's just a matter of like getting in the zone, and then I actually get called upon to do this for just one topic, and I could do that. I prepare that comparatively readily, but it's a matter of getting into the zone for doing it. And so the consideration is that if I'm going to get into the zone for doing this, is beneficial. Here's a project that can be done, and then the work product is a booklet that can be shared with kinfolk on that topic. Again, of the Panchaseelas umbrella, and then the rainbow chakras. So that's where we're going on this joint. From this joint, with this joint, to this joint. Have we got all the prepositions covered? Glee, glee, glee. So yeah, that's pretty much it. This is over an hour, so that's what I have to share. Yeah, how am I gonna post it? I gotta go to places to post this. Yeah, that's the other thing too. I don't just press a button and it's uploaded. I gotta go. I gotta walk. I gotta trot with a broken toe and a sprained back. Oda. Yeah, I gotta go. Got things to do. So, anything else? Marriage, wife, children, family. Marriage, wife, children, family. Marriage, wife, children, family. Marriage, wife, children, family. Now, I should probably just provide a notice that the intentionality is from this point, God willing, for me to articulate that repeatedly, even if I don't have notes, to articulate that and intersperse it through any delivery that I do from this point on. So when you're hollering at me, you can keep that in mind as well, because when I holler back, interspersed, even in the middle of a sentence, marriage, wife, children, family. Marriage, wife, children, family. Marriage, wife, children, family. You can expect to hear that as well. According to the will of the Most High Elohim. So with that being said, all thanks and praise belong to the Most High Elohim. Respect and honor to all our ancestors and all our prophets and all our sages, past and present, known and unknown. Respect and honor to His Majesty Haile Selassie I. Respect and honor to Her Majesty Waizara Manen. Blessed love and peace in Rastafari. One perfect love.